All right. Hey, everybody. Chuck Holton here. How's it going? Thank you for watching The Hot Zone, coming to you from Panama today. And I hope you're doing well. Had a good weekend. Do me a favor and post in the chat where you're watching from. That's always fun, and it does help the algorithm. What amazes me is how many people we have watching from Venezuela, Trinidad, places that we're going to be talking about today. So if you're coming in from one of those places, you're definitely going to want to stick around, because I want to get your comments and questions about what you're seeing on the ground and that sort of thing. Now, President Trump is, we have more information about the phone call that was made between President Trump and Nicolás Maduro. We're going to be talking about that. And we've got some interesting information coming out of Venezuela itself and out of Colombia. And so we're going to get to all of that. There's actually a lot of combat happening in Colombia right now between the Colombian military and the FARC and the ELN. And many of those guys are actually based in Venezuela or funded by Venezuela. So we're going to show you some of that fight as well. Before I get to that, I don't like to just try to sell you things when it comes to our sponsors. I like to educate you a little bit as well. And, it's one thing I was looking into. Our Preserve Gold is our sponsor for today, is the industrial demand for precious metals. They're basically the part of the precious metal story that nobody at the dinner table talks about, even though it really matters a lot. And so, for example, gold isn't just for putting in your vault or wearing on jewelry and that sort of thing. Electronics, medical devices, aerospace, and now a big list of high-end tech applications are using it for the simple reason it doesn't corrode and it conducts electricity absurdly well. So the growth in industrial gold use is small in terms of the total amount of gold being purchased right now. Governments and individuals are purchasing gold like there's no tomorrow, and that ought to tell you something right there. But the industrial use of gold, what that does is it tightens up the floor for the price of gold. So that means that the price of gold probably wouldn't go down very much, because all of that industrial gold actually takes gold off the market pretty much permanently. There are some programs out there that will try to recycle the gold out of your old iPhone and stuff like that. But for the most part, that stuff is gone for good. And so it tightens up the total supply of gold worldwide and should make the prices continue to rise. Now, silver, the industrial demand for silver is the real workhorse here. It goes in solar panels, electronic vehicles, other electronics, antimicrobial coatings, batteries, and a horde of other gadgets that just chew through it nonstop. So unlike gold, a big chunk of silver is used in industry, and again, literally gone for good, because it isn't economical to recycle it from very many products. Maybe one of you should start a business recycling silver. Nevertheless, if you have a retirement plan and you think you're diversified because you've got it in a stock mutual fund or something like that, think again, because all that means is that if the market tanks, all of those things tank, because they're all tied. They're all risk assets tied to the stock market. Gold, on the other hand, has been a store of wealth for millennia, and it has actually grown very quickly as some uncertainty around the world has ramped up. So if you invested in gold 5 years ago, you'd be better off if your entire portfolio was in gold than if it was just partially in gold and the rest in stocks, because gold has outperformed stocks for the last 5 years. That's almost unheard of. And it just speaks to how crazy our environment is today. Well, they don't expect that to stop anytime soon. And so gold is over $4,000 an ounce now. It may very well go over $5,000 an ounce in the next 12 months. I don't know. I'm not a prophet, but it certainly can go down. But it shouldn't go down if inflation stays high and uncertainty stays high. So Preserve Gold will help you put your 401k or IRA parts of it into physical gold and silver. They'll help you get a vault and put that stuff in the vault in your name. It's actual gold. It's not paper gold. So it's not going to just evaporate if they get a margin call or something. And I highly recommend it, especially if you're nearing retirement age. So I invest in gold, and Preserve Gold is a great company to work with. You can call them on the phone, get a real person right away, or you can just text the word Chuck to 50505 and get a free wealth protection guide sent to you. Or you can go to the website that's listed there at the bottom of the screen. Either way, I highly recommend you check out Preserve Gold, and they are the ones that you want to go to if you're interested in putting some gold into your portfolio. All right, so that's all for our sponsor today. Thank you very much to Preserve Gold. Now, talking about what's going on in Venezuela, there are many pundits who are now saying that it looks like that something is going to happen this week. I've been toying with the idea of going up to the border between Colombia and Venezuela and interviewing people coming out of Venezuela, especially if this happens. So it's an easy flight from here in Panama. So I may fly up there directly if something does go down. But if the pundits are all saying that something is bound to happen this week. Here's a senator or congressman, I think it's a congresswoman, that's speaking to the subject on Fox and Friends.
To be hard. 80% of the Venezuelans voted for the opposition. You have 8 million Venezuelans in exile. We're talking about the largest reserves of oil in the world that will be doing business with the American oil companies. And that is something that I have made very sure that they understand. American companies in Venezuela for the next 100 years.
All right. Well, you heard it. It's imminent in just days. Congresswoman.
So that's Congresswoman Maria Salazar talking about, that this will be a good thing because we'll be able to have more access to their oil, and other companies will be able to go into Venezuela and invest in Venezuela. And that part of it certainly is true. If Maduro leaves, it's very likely that there will be some huge investment opportunities that open up inside Venezuela as you try to get that country back on its feet. It's going to be a generational process, though. I don't know about you. If you're in Venezuela, tell me if you agree or not. But I think that the Venezuelan culture is in such shambles because socialism doesn't just destroy the economy of a country. It destroys the very moral fabric of the country. And right now, the only growth industry in Venezuela is kidnapping. So it's going to take some time to get Venezuelans out of the survival mindset, the scarcity mindset. When you're in a scarcity mindset, you are going to be you're not going to be charitable. You're going to try to do whatever you can to survive, even if it's immoral or unjust. So that would mean stealing from people. It would mean, whatever. Things that you would never consider doing if you had a wealth mindset, you will do. Prostituting yourself, things like that. And we see that coming out of Venezuela. This is not a knock on the people of Venezuela. It's a knock on the government of Venezuela for creating these conditions. But if you go to Cucuta, Colombia, you can watch, I've got a video on my channel here where I went to Cucuta and I walked around downtown at night, and there are just Venezuelan girls lined up on the streets like it's a parade, and they're all prostituting themselves. Many of them are mothers with children, who have husbands back home, but they just literally don't have anything else to sell, and they're starving. And so they come across into Colombia because they can make more money that way, and they prostitute themselves, $6 a trick or something like that. But that's a lot more money they can make, and it's nothing to walk around down there and find girls that are 13, 14, 15 years old. I've been down there multiple times, and it is one of the saddest things you'll ever see. So that is what you get when you have a scarcity mindset, and the scarcity mindset will not go away if Nicolás Maduro goes away, not right away anyway. It'll take some time, and it'll take some impetus, some facilitation from without Venezuela. And that is likely to happen. Just like I say, don't think it's going to happen overnight. Now, we found out more about the phone call that took place last week between President Trump and Nicolás Maduro. And so I wanted to talk about that because at first, when they announced that there had been a call, they didn't say anything about what had been said. And so we speculated that Maduro had begged Trump not to invade, and Trump had told Maduro he needed to skedaddle. And that's pretty much what we know now. So President Trump said that he basically he told Nicolás Maduro, look, we're not making any deals with you. You need to leave as soon as possible. That's the bottom line. And I don't know if he delivered it in the form of an ultimatum, but according to President Trump, that was the substance of the phone call, was Nicolás Maduro saying, hey, we can work together on eradicating the drugs from Venezuela. Just let me stay in power. Let me keep control of the military, all of that. And President Trump said, yeah, you're not really in any position to make deals right now. You need to just, go to Russia and play Fortnite with Bashar al-Assad, as my friend Ryan Macbeth said. So that was essentially it for the call. Now, Maduro is trying to put forward a face in Venezuela that says, I'm not, I'm not afraid. There's a video going around. I think I have, no, that's the one that got bombed. Oh no, here it is. Video going around. This is
aprobado. Hoy está aprobado. Mira, está la avenida San Martín.
So there's Maduro driving around, and Maduro is driving. He's the one that's actually driving the vehicle. So that's something. You don't normally see the president of a country actually driving himself, but they're in an SUV driving around in Caracas near the main train station, whatever. And so, I mean, I guess you gotta admire his moxie here. But if you notice, the windows on this vehicle are so blacked out that nobody would be able to see inside to see that it was the president driving around. Now, I don't know what exactly this proves. It proves, I guess, that Maduro still has mobility and can move around in Caracas if he likes to. But I don't think anybody ever disputed that. Maduro certainly has the ability to move around. But I guess this is just a way of kind of shaking your fist at the United States and saying, I'm not afraid of the United States because I can go out and drive around Caracas here. So, and take selfies with my buddies. This is interesting. There have been some very interesting videos that have come out recently from Venezuela, from the government, trying to do that, trying to show, look, everything's okay, nothing's wrong, we're all fine, we're strong, and we're ready to fight if it comes to it, and et cetera, et cetera. Nate, would you do me a favor and remove the videos we've already shown so that I can replace them with, I've got other ones that I haven't put up yet. So there was a video that came out from, I think, Táchira or some.
I can't replace them. Dad. Only you can.
Okay. No, that's fine. No, I don't want you to replace them. I just want you to remove the ones that I've already.
I can't get rid of videos you've added.
All right. I did it. Okay. I got it. So this video we saw out of, I think it was Táchira, was a governor of the province sitting down to eat a nice meal of hamburgers and stuff with his family. And they had music playing in the background, and he's talking, and his daughters are there kind of like doing the Instagram kind of thing. They stick their lips out and try to look, I don't know, like they're ducks or something. But if you look real close in the video, what you notice is the food is all plastic. It's like fake plastic food on their plates. And I mean, obviously those people were well fed. I mean, these guys, this is the governor of the province. He's not going to be going hungry. So they must have real food. So why would they be putting up videos trying to pretend that they had a meal, but it's actually plastic food? You can see, like, at the end, like somebody's pretending to cut the plastic burger or something with a knife, and it's not cutting. And I mean, it's just weird. There was another video that came out. I was going to show it to you. I was like, not even going to bother. I think it was Maduro's uncle or his dad or somebody like that, saying, if the Americans come, and he's standing there in front of a crowd of people on the street, and he's like, if the Americans come, this is what I'll do to them. And then he goes into this like karate thing and starts going, ha, ho, ha, ho, and everybody's clapping, you know, and he's dancing around doing his little karate thing, which I don't think would work real well against a JDAM or a 500-pound bomb or something. Weird stuff. Even weirder, the president of Colombia continues to try to defend his friend, Nicolás Maduro, his fellow communist. And now he's doing it by claiming that everybody who is against them in the United States is a pedophile. And I translated this to English for you. Take a listen to this speech he gave. It's just, again, it just kind of like scratch your head and go, what?
A clan of pedophiles wants to end democracy in Colombia. Hard, nah? Yes, but that's the reality we face. And to prevent that list from coming out, they send us battleships to murder fishermen from this very city.
Yeah, so they say, and they're murdering fishermen. Obviously, we know they're not fishermen because fishermen don't travel in semi-submersibles or in go-fast boats with 5 motors on the back. So he's lying right there, but keep listening.
And threaten our neighboring country, regardless of whether its leader is a dictator or not. How could the people of Colombia possibly applaud an invasion of their brother nation, an invasion that isn't against the president, but against the very people of Venezuela?
Well, that's another lie, because if there is an invasion, it certainly will not be against the people of Venezuela any more than the invasion of Panama in 1989 was against the people of Panama. I was a part of that invasion, and I can tell you that all of us came down here with the understanding that we were liberating the Panamanian people, not attacking them. And I saw guys go out of their way to protect Panamanians. I saw American troops laying their bodies on top of Panamanians to try to shield them from gunfire from the PDF. That was in Panama City at the beginning of the conflict. So if we do go to war with Venezuela, it's certainly not going to be against the Venezuelan people. It will be to remove the Venezuelan dictator, the unelected. This guy is an illegitimate president of Venezuela. And he's also saying, why would we applaud that here in Colombia? Well, I got one good reason, because you got 2 million Venezuelans living in your country that are using up your resources, your medical care. They're causing more police to have to be hired, and they're all sorts of stuff. And almost all of those Venezuelans would go back home once Maduro is gone. That would be a very good thing economically for Colombia, but the president of Colombia doesn't see it that way.
Would we truly be such despicable traitors and sellouts that we would betray our very own blood? Or are the people of Ecuador or the people of Panama or the people of Venezuela not considered to be our very own people?
I don't know.
So they want the president to do what Dan Coloral Duque, the coward, wanted to do. Lend Colombia's land so that from there a sister country could be invaded, a country that shares our history because Bolivar was born there and came to die here in this city. It cannot be done.
So I'm not sure what he means by that. I mean, other than, we're okay, we're all Latinos. So, but he almost alludes to the fact, or the question of whether or not the United States asked Colombia to allow U.S. troops on their soil to attack Venezuela. I have not heard anything about that actually happening. I don't believe that it would have happened. I don't think the United States would do that. The president of the United States is not friendly with the president of Colombia. The President Trump actually PNG'd the president of Colombia, persona non grata. He can't come back to the United States because the last time he was in the United States, this dude is the president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro. Last time Gustavo Petro was in the United States for the UN General Assembly, he went out on the streets of New York and grabbed a megaphone and started encouraging people to rise up against the government of the United States, commit insurrection against the U.S. military and the U.S. government, which obviously is inappropriate if you're in a neighboring country. I mean, if you're in another country that's not your own. So, that I think is a very good reason to PNG the president. But he continues.
Salam. Any Colombian president who does that will be cursed by future generations because he will never be forgotten as a traitor. And I am not among those who wish to kill Bolivar. I have made many criticisms of Venezuela's
He's talking about the Bolivarian revolution there. It just didn't translate correctly.
Government, but I do not mock the people of Venezuela, nor do I build a trap for the people of Venezuela to fall into the trap of an invasion that only seeks their oil.
It's not that we already buy their oil. All we'd have to do if we wanted their oil would be lift the sanctions. We don't have to invade Venezuela to get their oil. And their oil is so thick, it's like tar. It's not good quality oil there, and we don't need it. We're energy independent. So this is a ridiculous statement.
What they want is more greed and violence to turn this beautiful corner of the South American continent into a Syria, an Iraq, a Libya, full of slaves, of slave trade, of new black people. Isn't that right?
Blah, 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 blah,
the
blah.
list of
Bring up
friends
racism.
belonging to Stein, who doesn't want the list to be published in the United States? They want to use us here through violence so that the people of the United States won't focus on their own government, but instead become consumed by xenophobia, by racism, by notions of a superior race and other false ideas. And they use us to avoid discussing their own problems.
Right. Okay.
The president of Colombia.
I'm gonna pull him off of there because you get the point, right? This guy is pulling out all the old tired leftist tropes, racism and xenophobia and blah, blah, blah. And I don't know how you feel about the Epstein thing. I've heard Americans say all of this stuff in Venezuela is just to distract from the fact that they haven't released the Epstein files. I don't think so. I mean, I think the two things can be true at once, that maybe we should, have those files released for sure, but that there are very compelling reasons for us to be kind of going hard against Venezuela right now. Now, one of those reasons is the fact that there are there's a tremendous amount of Venezuelan cocaine, and cocaine coming out of Venezuela is actually grown in Colombia, that's making its way to Europe. It's not just the United States, it's also going to Europe. And it's crazy that the Europeans have been condemning the United States for the strikes on these boats offshore because some of the cocaine that we blew up very likely could have been headed to Europe and not to the United States to kill people in Europe. And so if anything, they should be applauding the United States for blowing up those boats. But everybody's going after Pete Hegseth because there was a Washington Post story that came out quoting unnamed sources saying that Pete Hegseth told the military commanders to kill them all and to strike again on a boat where there were some survivors. And I talked about this on the last the last time I talked about Venezuela. And I said back then, I'll say again, we don't know if that actually happened. The Washington Post, quoting unnamed sources close to the Pentagon or whatever, very often those things turn out to be false. They turn out to be people. I mean, one of the reasons that they're anonymous sources, they want to stay anonymous, is that they know that what they're saying is untrue. So I'm hoping that it's untrue, because if he did, command them to strike people who were clinging to the wreckage of one of these boats, that would be against the law. It would be against our own rules of engagement, or would be considered a war crime if that happened, unless there was some compelling reason to say, no, those people are still a threat, which is kind of hard to prove. But again, we don't know if Hegseth actually said that. And Hegseth himself has said that it's all a lie. So he said he's not said that, but everybody, not only on the left in the United States, but on the left in Latin America and on the left in Europe, is jumping on this story and saying, see, this proves that all of this is illegal. And they try to, kind of paint with a very broad brush and say that everything the United States is doing in the region is illegal, including the military buildup at sea and all that. And that's just not the case. I mean, this is something we're seeing happen. This is where critical thinking comes in, folks. You've got to learn to parse out the details of what's going on in any story that you read in the news. And for example, the corruption probe that's happening in Ukraine right now, a lot of people are painting with a very broad brush and saying, aha, see, we said Zelensky was corrupt all along. Well, Zelensky's the one that's calling for the investigations. Zelensky's the one who is actually taking the lead on arresting the people who are being charged with corruption in Ukraine. That's exactly what you want from a country. Look, every country has corruption. The United States is not immune to that in any way, shape, or form. What you want, and so finding corruption is not necessarily a reason to damn a country. What's more important is what the country does about the corruption. If they protect the corrupt, which is what happens in Venezuela, and they persecute the people who call out the corruption, which is what they do in Venezuela, then that nation is immoral, okay, and not worthy of our support in any way, shape, or form. But if a country is taking steps to root out the corruption, well, that's exactly what you want to see. So, you can't condemn Israel, for example, because a video just came out of 2 IDF soldiers shooting some unarmed Palestinians as they were trying to surrender, because the video doesn't do it justice, and you can't quite tell exactly why they decided to open fire when they did, but it doesn't look good. But Israel is calling for investigation of those troops, of the situation, to find out what really happened. And if something inappropriate happened, those people will be prosecuted. That's what you want to see. That shows that a country is addressing corruption and not protecting it. But that's not what's happening in Venezuela. So that makes this next clip all the more sort of ridiculous. This is the I think it's the vice president of Venezuela here. Listen to what he's saying.
We, at the same time as we form the Special Commission tomorrow, at the extraordinary session of the National Assembly, will also activate through the mechanisms available to the National Assembly, according to its constitutional prerogatives. We will activate the action of the Attorney General's Office, so that the Attorney General's Office also addresses the crimes committed against Venezuelans and Latin Americans in the Caribbean Sea. We will also request a meeting with the Bolivarian government to establish, together with the government of Sucre State, strategies to support the families of Venezuelans killed in these extrajudicial executions.
So he's calling for an investigation against the United States he's calling for this in the International Criminal Court. The ICC actually just shut down their offices in Caracas because they just don't get any help, or they get stymied every time they try to investigate any form of corruption or criminality or crimes against humanity that take place in Venezuela. But yet now this guy is calling for investigation against the United States for killing known drug dealers, or people that are narco traffickers. Again, the very fact that you're riding on a boat that's got 5 motors on it going 100 miles an hour across the Caribbean Sea, 85 miles offshore, pretty much proves that you're not a fisherman, because you can't fish at those speeds, and no fisherman is going to be able to afford a boat like that. One of the boats they blew up was a semi-submersible. There's only one use for a semi-submersible at all, and that's to smuggle contraband, to smuggle drugs. So he's saying in this clip that these people are innocent Latin Americans, innocent Venezuelans who are being killed in extrajudicial means, blah, blah, blah. Again, they're picking up on this trope, or this meme of Pete Hegseth ordering extrajudicial killings of people that are non-combatants. And again, you got to parse that out. That's not what he has publicly said at all. So if he said it privately, then that needs to come out, and it likely will. But at the same time, other countries are starting to call for regime change in Venezuela. And this is something that, like Panama has, the Panamanian president has called for, and others in the region. Here's Argentina in I think this is the OAS, or Organization of American States, calling for the ouster of Nicolás Maduro.
In Venezuela, which has worsened even more after the fraudulent July 2024 elections, demands immediate attention. We note that since the prosecutor's office announced in November 2021 the conclusion of the preliminary examination on Venezuela's situation, there has been little progress. Arbitrary detentions, inhuman treatment, and other crimes against humanity perpetrated by the Venezuelan regime require rigorous but expeditious investigations, including the issuance of arrest warrants against its main perpetrators.
So he's calling for the ICC to issue arrest warrants against the heads of the Cartel de los Soles, which would be the Venezuelan government. Now, I see somebody in the comments is saying, what about the Trinidadian that they killed? If a Trinidadian is riding on a go-fast boat that's carrying narcotics, then you play the game, you take your chances. That's all there is to it. Look, I don't think in all of the strikes, 22 strikes or so they've done so far on these drug boats, of the 83 people that they've killed, I don't think they are concerning themselves with the nationality of those people. The Pentagon says that they have very good information about who they are, where they're coming from, and where they're going to, and what they're carrying. But I haven't heard anything about the United States saying, well, there's a guy on there that's Trinidadian, so we're not going to blow that boat up. We'll just let it go. You can see the problems that would create. Now, we've talked at length about what the United States will likely do when and if they strike in Venezuela. Number one, they're not going to be going after civilian targets like Russia is doing on a daily basis in Ukraine. They're going to be taking out known drug sites. They're going to be taking out military targets, especially things that would threaten U.S. forces. We've got all these forces off. We've got to turn the audio off on this, but this is some video of the U.S. forces that are arrayed in the Gulf right now, and we've got to take out any targets in Venezuela that would maybe be able to fire a missile at our ships or at our planes, any air defense assets or anything like that. And we might likely go after some government buildings. We might have to go after the presidential palace, something like that. None of those are going to be aimed at civilian targets. Now, the last time there was an actual invasion or military operation of this scope in Latin America was December 1989, when I parachuted into Panama, and there were about 27,000 troops that were taking part in that operation. The objective of that operation was to remove Manuel Noriega, secure the Panama Canal, and reinstall the democratically elected government. So this could be similar to that. If we did see troops on the ground, it would not be for a long period of time. And as that Congresswoman said on Fox and Friends, this is going to be something that happens quickly. That a full-on invasion is not in the cards, but it is likely that if we take the steps necessary to remove Maduro from power, that you're going to see very quickly all of the other institutions that Maduro has lined up to support him falling like dominoes. And that includes support from Russia, Iran, and China. None of those countries want anything to do with this conflict. They've all made noises in support of Venezuela and saying, oh, the United States shouldn't, be invading a neighboring country. That would be totally wrong, says Russia, who just is coming in 4 years of invading a friendly country next door. So, there's some nuclear level hypocrisy going on there. Those three countries are not going to provide any support for Venezuela. That's pretty clear at this point. Anything more than they have already provided in terms of military assistance or financial assistance or advisors on the ground or anything like that. Russia is starting to actually pull its people out of Venezuela. There was some videos of Aeroflot aircraft, Russian aircraft leaving Caracas, taking their diplomats and their advisors and things out, because if those guys, what those guys were there doing was helping to secure Nicolás Maduro, and it's that they don't want any part of this fight, and they don't want their people getting killed. So they are advising people to get out. Anybody who's there of their own volition, and their own advisors and diplomats are leaving on aircraft as we speak. President Trump is meeting at the White House with Pete Hegseth and others, in the national security realm and that sort of thing, to make a final decision on what they're going to do. That's happening today. There is some pretty serious conflict within the Trump administration, I understand, between DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, and the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and others that, some are pushing very hard for a military intervention in Venezuela. Apparently Tulsi Gabbard is pushing very hard that we not intervene militarily in Venezuela. And so they're going to have to hash all that stuff out. And President Trump's going to have to make a final decision sometime soon. In the meantime, Pete Hegseth went down to Puerto Rico and then flew out to some of the ships that we have out in the Gulf on Thanksgiving Day in order to have Thanksgiving with the troops. And I just want to play this clip because I think this shows what kind of a man Pete Hegseth is. And this is why I really love the fact that he's our Secretary of War. I really love what he's doing with the U.S. military. And I especially love that he is not afraid to put his faith on display for the troops and to pray with the troops and that sort of thing. So he went down there with his wife. Let's take a listen to this video.
Jenny and I want to wish America's best, our warriors, a happy Thanksgiving. We're here in the Caribbean about to go get on a couple of ships and have Thanksgiving meals with our troops, but our minds are also in Washington, D.C. with the two great Americans who were ambushed and targeted, and we're prayerful for them, for all those around them, for their families. We're pulling for them, and we have their backs. And yeah, we're prayerful, but we're also increasing our resolve, just like they are, that we will keep the Capitol safe and secure the American people. But we really wanted to spend Thanksgiving with the troops. There's no better way to do it. On mission down here for Southern Spear. We're really excited to get out there and go see them. And certainly, we're missing our family, but we're thinking about their families.
And we know that family is the backbone of your service, and we are so grateful for that. And we just pray blessings upon all of you and your families wherever you are today, and hope that you truly do have a happy Thanksgiving.
Absolutely. I was deployed 3 times, was always thinking about my family, and hope they were gathering with food and football and all those things. These folks won't be. We're going to bring them maybe a turkey and a little bit of cheer.
I think he's about to share something that he reads at our Thanksgiving table every year to the kids.
You're exactly right. I'll close with this. George Washington's Thanksgiving Proclamation from 1789. It started with this. Whereas it is the duty of all nations to acknowledge the providence of Almighty God, to obey his will, to be grateful for his benefits, and humbly to implore his protection and favor. So we humbly implore Jesus Christ, Almighty God, for his protection, for those in Washington, for those all around the world defending our nation. Happy Thanksgiving. We love you, we appreciate you, and we're here to serve you.
That just, I love to see that. I love to see that. We should never be afraid to display our faith at work. And a truly free America will encourage such displays of faith and not restrict them. So I applaud Pete Hegseth for doing that. I don't agree with everything he does. He's been wrong on a lot of stuff with respect to Ukraine, I believe. But for the most part, I am just ecstatic that he is our Secretary of War. So let's get to our questions. We're over 40 minutes already. So let's see, we got a bunch of questions up there. So let's start bringing up questions now. Before I do that, though, I do want to remind you that we have a Cyber Monday sale for all of our hot zone products over on the website. And you can go to that link right there, livefireinc.myshopify.com, and use the code Cyber Monday and get 20% off of all the merch, t-shirts and mugs and all that sort of thing. So highly recommend you go check that out. And also, don't forget to go to chuckholton.com and become a member over there, because you can support the work we do. You can help to feed and clothe and house people all around the world. Some of the charitable stuff that we're involved in, and we're going to talk more about that as the week goes on. We're just doing some really great things because of the help that you all provide to people around the globe. So just a reminder for all of that. All right, now let's get to our questions. So first question, why is Trump so difficult with Maduro and not the same with Putin when Putin is one playing him and not Maduro? Rhetorical question. I mean, that's a question that doesn't need an answer. I mean, it does need an answer, but I don't have an answer for it for sure. I wish I knew what it is about Vladimir Putin that he can just hold such sway over President Trump and make him do things that are clearly in America's, not in America's best interests, and certainly not in the best interests of the people with the moral high ground in that conflict, the Ukrainians. So next question, is Trump waiting for someone to turn in Maduro? Well, they have actually tried to talk like his pilot into turning him over, and his pilot wouldn't do it. A $50 million reward on the guy's head, that's pretty, substantial. And if I was anywhere in his inner circle, I'd be thinking real hard about that. The thing is, he has consolidated power in Venezuela by making the people around him very, very wealthy. So they get lots of perks. There's lots of benefits to being close to Nicolás Maduro. And if you're close to, if you're in that circle, you're not feeling the effects of socialism like the everyday person in Venezuela is. And those people, to them, 50 million might not be enough. Because they're already very wealthy because of their connections to Maduro. So perhaps somebody might turn him in, but so far it has not happened. All right. Next question. Do you believe that if they really wanted Maduro, they would have him already? I guess is what you're saying. No, I do believe they really want Maduro. They just would like for him to run away rather than having to send U.S. troops into harm's way to extract him from Venezuela. The best outcome for the United States is for Maduro to abscond and run away to Russia or someplace and go into exile. That accomplishes the goal without us having to start bombing things and putting U.S. troops at risk. So I think that's what they would prefer. All right. Thank you very much, Bob, for gifting the 5 Hot Zone memberships. I appreciate you doing that. You can become a member here on YouTube. I think it's $5 a month, and that helps to support us. We're going to do a fundraiser, I think, tomorrow to try to support these young women in Colombia that we are taking care of. We've got over 120 of them now. We just did another outreach to the women's prison in Cartagena and took dignity kits and the gospel into those women and preached to them as well as met their physical needs. So we're going to do a fundraiser, I think, tomorrow here on YouTube and off of YouTube. You can donate any way you like to try to help those girls. So stay tuned for that. Hope you'll come back tomorrow for that one. Now, Jill Matthews says, can you comment on the second strike the U.S. made on the drug boat recently? Was it wrong for the U.S. to do that? I did a whole podcast on that pretty much yesterday or day before. Well, it would have been Friday or Saturday. But the short answer is, if those people were not a threat, I mean, they were considered a threat when they were driving a boat full of drugs that would kill Americans toward America. Then they were a threat. Drop a bomb on them, and now that threat is gone, and those 2 guys clinging to the wreckage, they probably would have expired anyway. We don't know. I mean, obviously, we don't have all of the information that the U.S. military had as to what the reasoning was behind why they did that. But it just doesn't look good, and it obviously gives a lot of ammunition to our adversaries, both in the United States, like Democrats in Congress and things like that, and outside the United States, like Gustavo Petro and Nicolás Maduro. So if we blew up 2 guys who were not a threat in a double tap strike, that would be wrong. That would be considered a war crime, and it needs to be investigated, and it is being investigated. There are 2 investigations that have been started in the U.S. House of Representatives, the National Security Committee, I think, the Senate Armed Services Committee, and the House are both investigating that right now, and they'll have to get down to the bottom of it. And if Pete Hegseth ordered that strike, indeed, then sadly he probably has to go. But nobody has proven that he actually did that. He, for his part, denies that he ordered a second strike, and so then the responsibility for that strike would go probably to the commander who did order the second strike. But we'll just have to wait and see how that plays out. Again, we like to see investigations when something like this comes up, and that is not proof that's actually proof that we're doing things right. Is that when people do things wrong, we get to the bottom of it and we prosecute people that are responsible. Okay. What role has the CIA been playing in Venezuela, St. Hegseth says, over the last couple of months? Well, I'm glad you asked, actually. The honest answer is that President Trump the CIA has been active in Venezuela, supporting Venezuelan opposition figures for many years. And a lot of that was done through through USAID and other sort of covert means, just to support them, try to get aid into them. We did that during the first Trump administration when Juan Guaido was the kind of recognized president of Venezuela, even though he wasn't. And I did a lot of reporting on that. But since President Trump took office the second time, we've gotten a lot more overt about our support via the CIA and trying to affect regime change. So they're, going all the way back to 2019, when Trump recognized Juan Guaido as the interim president, the CIA run initiative to help overthrow Maduro kind of failed at that point. But there were cyber operations that we did against them. We hacked their military payroll system, for example, just to sow distrust and encourage defections from the armed forces. That part was successful. There were many, many thousands of defections from the armed forces, to the point where Maduro doesn't trust his armed forces anymore. He uses criminal gangs to enforce his will and uses foreign mercenaries to protect him and his family because he doesn't trust his own military to do it. There's been a lot of fights in the White House over, what our risk tolerance should be with putting the CIA on the ground in Venezuela. Bottom line is that, we're not even denying it now. Trump publicly confirmed in October that he'd authorized the CIA to conduct covert operations inside Venezuela. He framed that as going after drug trafficking and prisoners that were released from prison and then sent north to the United States to enter the U.S. illegally. Legal and national security analysts now openly refer to an ongoing covert operation in Venezuela under standard covert action authority. So that, is not against the law. There are some battles going on in Congress over the correct way to oversee those classified programs. But based on the reporting and the logic of what that might look like, it would mean that we're providing the opposition with detailed information on regime figures, security force loyalties, corruption networks, other vulnerabilities. I don't know. There's certainly more cyber and information operations that are happening. We're seeing widespread power outages in Venezuela, have been for a long time, actually. Hacking, data leaks, psychological operations aimed at the regime and the military elites to kind of push them to defect and split with Maduro and maybe go so far as to turning Maduro in. And then supporting underground opposition figures that are in hiding to help them maintain communications, logistics, external contacts, and things like that. So I doubt you're going to have Jason Bourne or I don't know, some shadowy spy figure like that going in and assassinating Maduro or anything like that. That's not really what the CIA is all about right now. But they're certainly working in Venezuela. There's no question about it. Okay, next. We keep hearing this for weeks now. When is it going to happen? Well, it's more likely now than it was 3 weeks ago. I went to Trinidad about a month ago because they said, it's going to happen within 48 hours. Well, then it didn't. But we've continued to build up forces in the region. There are now more than 15,000 combat troops on station in the Caribbean. And we are making plans and improving our bases and things like that in the region that show that the United States is planning this to be a years-long operation against drugs trafficking out of Latin America and not just against Venezuela. And I think Gustavo Petro ought to be careful, because if he goes too far down the road to communism, then our next target might be Colombia. I don't know. But obviously, if he's becoming the same kind of dictatorial president that Maduro is, the difference is that Gustavo Petro was legitimately elected, as far as we know. But well, I mean, things could get worse for him if he keeps flapping his gums. All right, next. So thoughts on the new radar in Tobago? Yeah, I've got an image of that. I'll put that up on the stage here. Apparently, the United States put this new radar array, a U.S. military radar array, in Tobago, which is, as you see there, just offshore of Venezuela, and that has a direct line of sight to Caracas. And this originally was said by the Trinidadian government that this was just an improvement to the radar at the airport there, for civilian traffic. But that particular radar array is more for detecting incoming missile threats. So it's not surprising that we would be putting those up. If we're going to have some sort of fight with Venezuela, we're going to want to have the assets in place to be able to detect missile launches so that we can keep our troops safe. So there's your answer to that question. Thank you for that. PN, I wonder if Trump will hit Mexico's fentanyl traffickers. I don't understand why Mexico isn't getting the same treatment as Venezuela. Well, they are in some sense. The difference here is that Gloria Sheinbaum, or whatever her name is a duly elected president of Mexico. She's not an illegitimate president like Maduro. So we're not going to be going for regime change. We already have U.S. Special Forces on the ground in Mexico working with Mexican Special Forces and Marines to go after the cartels. So the only change would be if we just decided that wasn't worth, the juice isn't worth the squeeze, to work with the Mexican government, and we decided to act unilaterally by dropping bombs on those guys. And we haven't done that in Venezuela yet. So we might end up doing it in Mexico at some time, but right now we're not. And as I said, there's a lot of fighting going on between Venezuelan-backed rebels in Colombia and the Colombian military. And the Colombian military, until recently, got a lot of support from the United States. And we've cut that off now because we're not getting along with Gustavo Petro. So I have a video of, turn that audio off on that. But this is a video of Colombian special forces that are going in on a raid to rescue I think it was like a diputado or a delegate, I guess, of the Colombian government, who was kidnapped and was taken out. This is out, I believe, near the border with Venezuela. And this is an ELN camp, I think, where they're going in and raiding this camp and rescuing this guy. Now, this is, as a military guy who did things like this for a living for a while, it pains me to watch just how poorly these guys are actually clearing, the building and that sort of thing. They're just asking to get killed. But fortunately, they weren't killed. They found the guy that was kidnapped, and they rescued him, and they pulled him out of there. They put some body armor on him, and they put him up on the helicopter and got him out of there. So I think there were 2 people rescued in this particular raid. But there's a lot of fighting going on between the Colombian government and these rebels. It doesn't all have to do with narcotics. It has more to do with they don't think the government is left-wing enough, and so they're attacking the government, kidnapping. They assassinated the guy that was running for president for this next election coming up next year. the guy that I actually interviewed the last time I was in Cúcuta. So you can see here, this woman they just rescued is extremely happy to be out of there. And so good on the Colombian. Look, I've been out with the Colombian military. I've embedded with those guys. They are great guys. And I really identify with them. I mean, they're very courageous, manly guys, and they are doing the Lord's work to try to make Colombia safer. No question about that. So good on them. All right, next question. Any quick update on airstrikes and attacks by Russia on Ukraine over the weekend? Yeah, they killed a bunch of civilians. I think 6 on Sunday and 4 or 5 more this morning. One of them was a little girl. Very sad. That they are intentionally targeting civilians all across Ukraine, trying to just scare people into giving up. And that's really sad to see. Even as they're supposedly doing peace negotiations with Ukraine and soon with Russia, everybody is saying, look, we know Russia is not actually going to agree to a peace deal. They can't afford to. They're not going to do it. But let's not talk too much about that because we're already getting late on time. So he became a part of the seditious 6. I'm not sure who you say he.
He's talking about the president of Colombia, I believe.
Oh, well, it's not sedition for the president of another country to call for regime change in a country that's not his own. So you couldn't call him a seditionist, but he certainly had no right to be in the United States calling for regime change. That would just make him an enemy of America, and that's pretty much what he is. All right, next. Klamath River Media again. I know I've talked about this before, but do you think we're in a greater world war? Could you expand on that idea? Who's the new Axis? I do think we're in World War III, and I've been saying this for several years now. Look at all of the countries who have people fighting in Ukraine. There are the Ukrainians say that they have killed or captured citizens of more than 100 countries who are being brought into Russia and then sent to the front lines. In many cases, against their will. They're being tricked into Russia with promises of jobs from places like Indonesia and India and Colombia and Cuba and many other countries. And then they're being put on the front lines and sent into Ukraine and being killed or captured there. And so it's not just troops from North Korea. They're troops from all over the globe that are, and a lot of Africans, people from African countries. Matter of fact, there's military recruiters for Russia in Africa, recruiting recruiting Africans to go fight in Russia. And, the money is pretty tempting for those guys. You imagine you come from a place where $1 a day is the living wage, and they're going to be offered $2,000-3,000 a month to go fight in Ukraine. There's a lot of guys that would take them up on that. And of course, they have no idea just how deadly it is there, just how likely it is that they'll never live to spend any of that money. But it is happening. So if you've got over 100 countries fighting on the side of Russia, we've got dozens of countries at least fighting on the side of Ukraine, all volunteers, mind you, not like, North Korea sending their troops, but just guys volunteering. I've been out with Americans and Canadians and people from Europe that are in Ukraine fighting against Russia. I've even seen Russians that are fighting against Russia and Belarusians as well. So you add all that up, if you've got all the world's countries fighting against each other, even if it's not a global fight, if they're fighting in one place, I still think that would count as a world war. And pretty much every country in the world has taken a position on that war, and so has either sent aid to to Ukraine or to Russia. And Russia is encouraging. There's one good reason why we know that Russia probably is not going to help Venezuela if we go to war with them, is because Russia would love there to be a war between the United States and Venezuela, just to dilute the U.S., to make the U.S. Care more about its own hemisphere than it does about Ukraine. And they've been spectacularly successful at that with this administration. All right, next question. Do dogs really get armed up with tactical gear like on your shirt? No, they don't. I have never seen a dog carrying an M4. This would be a miniature M4, and I don't even know what it would shoot. So what kind of a question is that? Next, why has Trump allowed Russia and China to insert themselves in the Caribbean? Well, it wasn't Trump that allowed it. It was definitely Obama and Biden that allowed it. Trump is trying to do something about it. And I think one of the biggest reasons for taking Maduro out is to remove Venezuela as a foothold for China and Russia in the Western Hemisphere. So I'd say Trump is trying to do something about that. And putting a blockade into effect would be a good step, perhaps. And we'll have to see if they decide that that is worth doing. You say, I think Putin is afraid of, Trump is afraid of Putin and Xi. Perhaps he is. I just don't understand the sway that Putin has over Donald Trump. Okay, Rubio told him to clean out his act. How many millions Zelensky made out of this war? Okay, we're not gonna go there because I've already talked about that many times. And you're not going to change the mind of somebody who is so spectacularly intellectually dishonest that they really believe that tripe when there's so much information out there that disproves it. So you don't need me to continue to try to hold your hand in that process. Do a little reading, do a little research, stop listening to Tucker Carlson, and you'll maybe find the truth about what's going on in Ukraine. Next question, will the narco traffickers begin using human shields to transport drugs to the U.S.? I've wondered about that, and we may see something like that happen, but I'm not sure how many people they'd be able to convince to get on a boat that is likely to get blown out of the water. I think they're just going to really kind of change their modus operandi to start bringing drugs up through Panama and up, into the United States that way, which Trump says they've got a plan for that as well. So next question. Why doesn't Trump do to Mexico what he's about to? Okay, we already answered that one. If we already answered the question, then don't bring it up, Nathan. Why are you on board with taking in other countries' oil? I don't understand how that's okay. Listen to me very carefully. Read my lips. We are not going up against Venezuela for their oil. If we wanted Venezuela's oil, we could buy it, and we are buying it. We're buying about 200,000 barrels a day from Venezuela right now. They're, I think, the fourth largest external contributor to the United States oil market right now. If we wanted more of their oil, all we'd have to do is lift the sanctions and just buy it. They would sell it to us, okay? So it doesn't make any sense to say that the United States is going to war with Venezuela in order to take their oil. We're not. And that is, and again, Venezuelan oil is not all that great. It's not all that valuable because we can get oil from right next door in Guyana that's light and sweet, that's easy to refine, so that we don't need to get this ugly, dirty, thick oil that comes out of Venezuela. That's one of the reasons why Venezuela wants to take over a large portion of Guyana, is because they want that light, sweet crude that's just out of their reach, okay? So again, people keep asking, they ask the dumbest questions. It's just like, do I have to keep answering this over and over again? All right, Pamela says, wouldn't the accusation of U.S. pedophiles possibly be a reference to the Epstein files? Well, that's exactly what it is. And again, you might actually agree with Gustavo Petro on that count, that perhaps they're just drumming up a war in Venezuela to distract people from their outrage over the fact they haven't released those files on Epstein yet. I don't know why they haven't. I haven't delved really deeply into that because I don't really deal with stuff inside the United States all that much. But you know, it's possible that he's actually correct about that part. Okay, next. Is China still trying to get drugs, fentanyl, into America? Well, President Trump did a pretty good job during his first administration of getting China to stop sending fentanyl to Mexico to go into the United States. But then what they did is they changed to just sending the precursor chemicals for fentanyl to Mexico and then having the cartels in Mexico refine it into fentanyl and transfer it into the United States. That's what the Trump administration is going after now. And they're doing it through sanctions. They're doing it through, you know, threats of overt force against Mexico. The sanctions are against China. And so they are still trying to destroy America from within. That's been very effective way. I mean, imagine if China sent troops to America and killed 100,000 Americans. We'd be at nuclear conflict with them by that point. But they killed 100,000 Americans every year, the Biden administration, with fentanyl, and we didn't do anything. So now the Trump administration is trying to put a stop to it and having mixed success with that. All right, next. What kind of missiles does Venezuela have? Mostly Soviet era missiles, nothing that would really pose much of a threat to the United States. So I don't think we need to worry a whole lot about it. But you know, we have the ability to take out those missile launchers. Okay. All right. Next, if Maduro leaves, is there a legitimate government ready to step in so there will not be a power vacuum? Yes, there is. Maria Corina Machado and the duly elected president, I can never remember the guy's name, and he is actually in exile. Maria Corina Machado right now is in Norway accepting her Nobel Peace Prize. But yes, they were legitimately elected and they would be able to take over if Maduro leaves. Next. Is it dangerous for Americans down there now? If you by down there, you mean Venezuela? Yes. As I said, kidnapping is the only growth industry in Venezuela. So I don't even go to Venezuela. And if I won't go there, you certainly should not go there. You're refuting, Mary Malinowski says, you're refuting Paramount Tactical retired Green Beret Afghan platoon leader who says this action wasn't illegal because of the fact these were still combatants who could still cause issues. Now, I think that once you've blown their boat out of the water and they're literally clinging to wreckage 85 miles offshore with no boats nearby to rescue them, they're not that much of a threat. Now, they might actually survive and live another day to come bring more drugs into the United States, but that's a pretty large legal hurdle to clear to try to make the case that they're still a threat. The law of armed conflict, the law of the sea, international law all says that if somebody is shipwrecked, even in time of war, even in World War II, even in the Gulf War, when we blew an enemy boat out of the water, a German U-boat or something out of the water, we did not machine gun the survivors. We picked them up, we treated their wounds, we fed them, and we brought them back to a refugee camp, or a prisoner of war camp or something like that. To this day, there are Germans still up in the central northern part of America who are descended from prisoners of war that decided it would be better to stay in America after the war ended. So we would have a responsibility to pick them up, and if we wanted to, like, bring up charges against them and bring them to court and charge them with drug trafficking and put them in prison, then yeah, we could still do that. We don't have to just let them go. But if we've already blown their boat out of the water, then they're not a threat to us anymore. So I am definitely disagreeing with whoever this Green Beret is. USMC Heavy Junk says, did Ukraine hit the Russian oil tanker that is sinking in Senegal? I believe so. They obviously have not admitted to it, but the general accepted belief is that Ukraine is targeting shadow fleet vessels all around the world now and blowing them up. And we've seen them target people in Africa, target people in all over the place. So in Russia, the Ukrainians do not have a problem. Budanov, who's the head of security or head of intelligence for Ukraine, he is not afraid of sending his agents all around the world to help move this war along in a good direction. Okay. Next, Maduro has been messing with the election in 70 countries and nobody's talking about. Yeah, that's absolutely right. He certainly has. I was in Honduras, their last election, when Venezuelan agents provocateurs were there trying to whip up sentiment against the right-wing candidate. They're doing the same in, I think, Honduras right now. They're having another election, and this is something that Maduro's been doing for a long time. So getting rid of Maduro is going to be good for a lot of reasons, and that's one of them. All right, next. Whatever happened to Bakhmut? Are civilians moving back in there? No, they're not. Russia controls Bakhmut, and they destroyed it. I mean, there's nothing left of those. By the time they take any of those cities, there's nothing left to live in. There's no people left. They have created a wasteland from the Russian border all the way to the front line inside Ukraine. It's an absolute wasteland. Now, they did manage at the beginning of the war to take some cities like Mariupol that still have civilians, and the Russians have, persecuted those people horribly. But Bakhmut basically got pounded into powder, and the Russians finally took it, and that's it. But I mean, they still haven't taken Chasiv Yar, which is right next to Bakhmut, and that was over a year ago, right? And they haven't been able to move very far from there. And it just shows how slow the movement is actually on the front lines in Ukraine. All right, next. What's going to happen to all the Venezuelans that have fled? Many of them will go back home, and that's the hope. The United States is offering $1,000 and a plane ticket to any Venezuelan that wants to go back home. And so getting rid of Maduro will make it much more likely that Venezuelans will take us up on that and help to, accomplish the goal of the Trump administration to export as many of the illegal migrants that are in our country as possible. Next. If the USA really did a double tap, will the USA lose European support? They've already lost European support in many ways. The UK has stopped sharing intelligence with the United States. The UN has condemned all of the strikes, not just a double tap. And so a lot of countries are saying that these are extrajudicial killings. They don't agree with the sentiment of the Pentagon that these guys are legitimate military targets because they are weaponizing illegal drugs and pumping them into our country. That, I would say that those Europeans hold to a much too narrow view of what constitutes war, what constitutes a military threat. And as a matter of fact, they're having to confront that in Europe right now because of all of the drones and balloons and stuff that are straying into European territory from Russia and Belarus. As a matter of fact, I believe it was the Lithuanians that said they've had to shut down their international airport in Vilnius 10 times in the last few days because of balloons that are floating over from Belarus. And so now they're the head of the military of the United Nations, or the UN or EU, no, EU, I guess, is saying we may need to preemptively strike Russia to stop them from doing this. So they're actually talking about taking legal action, taking military action to stop Russia from flying drones over their countries. At the same time, they're saying the United States can't stop the drug boats that are coming in across our southern border. So that there's a bit of a disconnect there, I'd say. All right, next. What about all those drugs in the water floating up on a beach somewhere? Those drugs sometimes will float up on a beach. They're called square grouper down here in Panama. And usually they get turned over to the police and then they get destroyed. It's not likely that a lot of them are going to get repackaged and sent back up to the United States or something like that. Okay, next. How old are the Venezuelan planes? Pretty old. The last American planes they got were in the 1980s. The F-16s that they have are very, very old versions of the F-16s. They have some newer planes than that came from Russia, but those planes are no match for anything the United States has. So everything they have is obsolete. Let's put it that way. All right, next. I haven't watched the whole video on the boat, but can you tell it was something fired at them or did something explode in the boat? No, something was fired at the boat and blew it up. All right, next. If Maduro is captured, what do you consider is best for him to be happening? Well, if he's captured, then he will probably go to jail, federal prison in the United States, just like Manuel Noriega did. When we captured Noriega in Panama in 1990, he went to federal prison in the U.S. and spent 20 years behind bars. At the end of his 20 years, he was released by the United States, but France had charges against him for drug running and money laundering. And so he went to France for a year and served a year in prison in France. Then he came back to Panama and faced charges in Panama and spent the rest of his life in prison in Panama. So something similar like that could happen to Maduro. All right, next. There are 3 shadow fleet off the coast of Venezuela. Do the 2 hit by Ukraine make a difference? They weren't, the ones that were hit by Ukraine were not hit off the coast of Venezuela. There are probably close to 100 ships in the shadow fleet. And that number changes because sometimes these ships that agree to transport Russian oil illegally as a part of the shadow fleet change their mind when ships start getting blown out of the water or something like that. And they decide it's not worth it. And so that number is not a fixed number, but I'd say that probably close to 100 right now. All right, next. Thank you for that $10. Curtis Stafford, appreciate that. And we got a new member, Stanley Davis Jr. Thank you for becoming a member. Appreciate you. Smelhulda says, do you think that strikes will be until the end of this week? Thank you for your answer. Appreciate your dedication, hard work for us. If they decide to strike, it could start as early as tomorrow. As I said, President Trump is meeting with his basically war cabinet right now, and probably as we speak. He's there at the White House meeting with his guys, and they're going to make a final decision on what to do. Once they give the go-ahead and they execute signal, then strikes could happen as soon as tonight. So we'll just have to keep our eye on that. And when it happens, come back to this channel, and I'll go live immediately, day or night, whatever time it is, and we'll talk about it. So stay tuned. All right. Could it have been fired from them by their bosses to keep them from giving up information? Are you talking about the boats being blown out of the water? Their bosses probably don't have long-range missiles that would, or weaponized drones that would strike those boats. So no, I have to say no on that one. And last question: do you foresee Cuba becoming a threat in all this? No, Cuba is not a threat. They won't be a threat. They don't have what it takes to be a threat. They're having a hard time just keeping the lights on in Cuba at this point. So no. All right. Thank you very much for watching the Hot Zone, folks. I appreciate all of you, and I hope that you will go to chuckholton.com, check out some of the extra stuff we've got over there, where Nathan's going to put together a new documentary about our recent trip to Ukraine. Was it? Yeah, Ukraine. And so definitely hope you'll become a supporter over there at chuckholton.com. That's how we stay in business, folks, is over at chuckholton.com. You can become a supporter over there. We've got some specials going on right now where you get, I think, for $5 a month instead of $9 a month, something like that. So check out chuckholton.com and go to livefireinc.com shop.myshopify.com. Use code Cyber Monday and you can get 20% off the Hot Zone merch over there. So one last thing, we have a trip going in April to Panama. If you'd like to come to Panama and go see the Panama Canal and learn about the conflict that took place here, spend some time down at the beach, and then come up to the mountains and have some really relaxing time with my wife and I in our nice village up here in the mountains, please join us in Panama. Just send an email to info@holtonnews.com, info@holtonnews.com. There it is on the screen. And we'll send you all the information about that trip. It's a fairly low-priced trip. It's going to be luxury accommodations. We're staying in really nice places. And everybody who's come has just loved it. We have good food, good fellowship, and have a real good time together. So that's coming up in April. If you want a great spring break trip, it's just 5 days. Take a look at that. All right. We've got a few slots left for that trip. So thank you very much for watching. We'll see you again next time. Take care.